The underbelly of the city rumbled at Katya's feet. The roar of cycle engines drowned out the anxieties swirling by in her head. There was no room for that anyway. Not on the drifting track. This race wasn't anything new. It was nothing Katya couldn't handle. After all, she was doing it for the pocket change anyhow. A shot rang out into the night, and with it followed the screaming of tires against concrete. The match was on. Katya hardly even registered that her cycle began moving. It was merely muscle memory at this point. She had done this 1,000 times. And yet, something about that night felt different. She just wasn't quite sure what it was yet. As her tires climbed across the alleyway, Katya twisted the bike into a tight turn, screeching her metal cycle step and showering the street in sparks. It wasn't even a challenge for her at this point. She huffed at the thought. But no sooner did she catch her breath, did she catch a glimpse of stark white fabric and sparkling gems glinting under the streetlights. In an instant, she slammed on her brakes, still careening wildly towards the figure in the alley. Had the figure made some sort of movement, any sort of movement, the collision would have certainly been avoidable. And yet, the figure stood as still as a porcelain statue as Katya made a feeble attempt to shield them from the crash. Lying on a heap on the ground, Katya swore as she got to her feet and brushed herself off. Luckily, she assessed, she hadn't sustained anything more than superficial cuts and bruises. The figure, on the other hand, Katya stumbled towards the bright white mountain of fabric lying eerily still before her. "Hey," she whispered harshly. As she inched closer, she could see the fabric heap wasn't completely motionless. It looked almost as if the person was... Why? Katya would have sworn the faint whisper was purely of her imagination if it weren't for the voice growing insistent and asking again. Why? Katya tried to peer around the layers of tulle and lace. Why what? Why did I hit you? She scoffed quietly. Maybe because you were in the middle of the damn road? She huffed, daring another step forward. No. Why did you stop? Katya watched as the figure turned to face her, tears streaming down her face. The woman's dark makeup stained under her bloodshot eyes, her dark brown hair sticking haphazardly to the tears and mascara alike. Hey, you okay? You maybe hit your head a little? Katya gulped as she saw the distraught woman. Why didn't you kill me? She sobbed near silently. Before her eyes welled up with fresh tears, she turned her head away to sob into the pavement. Huh. Katya found she had little other thoughts in her head. Huh. Straightening herself, Katya sucked in a deep breath and hauled her bike off the ground, assessing the miraculously surface-level damage that the accident inflicted. So, can I give you a ride somewhere, or hospital? Mental hospital? Katya thought, but kept to herself. The young woman sniffled, scrubbed the tears from her face, and snapped a determined glance in Katya's direction. Yes, anywhere but here, she sniffled, but quickly wiped her face as she gathered up the endless, cascading ruffles of fine fabric. Yeah, so there's no way in hell that we can go anywhere with that entire closet's worth of linens. Katya eyed the dress up and down cynically. The young woman looked displeased as she quickly calculated her next move. Without a second's hesitation, she ripped the skirt of the dress like a feral raccoon clawing to be free. Katya swallowed hard before reaching for the knife in her pocket and carefully offering it to the stranger, who snatched it immediately and began making haphazard, jagged cuts. Regretting her actions immediately, Katya took a cautious step back as she watched the tumultuous scene. As she cut the last remnants of the restrictive white gown, Katya couldn't help but stare in awe of the young woman before her. She hadn't taken much of a look at her before, since she was distracted with saving her life. But now, under the glow of the twinkling city lights above, Katya could feel her breath catch as she watched the layers of elegance being slashed away and replaced by one of the most gorgeous bodies she had ever seen. And she couldn't help but just be a little distracted with how the young woman's mesmerizing lips twisted into the most beautiful frown. She could only imagine how they might look curled into a smile. Katya shook herself back into action. Anywhere but here, huh? Can do. She smirked and mounted her bike. The young woman approached the bike and folded her arms crossly. Okay, how do I get on? She asked sternly, masking the fear that drowned out her thoughts. Katya offered a light-hearted chuckle as she motioned a sweeping arm behind her. The young woman blushed with frustration. Sensing her hesitation, Katya quickly dismounted and wrapped her toned arms around the young woman's waist, hoisting her into the air and seating her gracefully on the seat behind her. As Katya took her seat in front of her, the young woman hoped she hadn't seen the pink flush of her cheeks. Hang on tight, I don't bite, I swear. Katya smirked over her shoulder as she revved the engine, forcing herself to focus on the road and not the beautiful stranger's slender arms slinking around her torso and grabbing firmly. Katya revved the engine once more before tearing off into the night. Isabel had never been on a motorcycle before, let alone a motorcycle traveling at what she assumed to be damn near the speed of sound. And yet, as the buildings became blurred streaks in the night, the remnants of her updo flying carelessly in the wind, she decided that she had never in her life felt more free. She sucked in a deep breath as her focus shifted back to the stranger in front of her. God, what had she done? This person could have been a murderer for all she knew. And yet, as she studied the leather-clad woman she clutched tightly to, she had never felt safer. Though she had been raised in a penthouse, Isabel knew more about the streets of Ciro than most in her social class. Knew enough to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the high-speed racer she clung to was part of the notorious Stryle clan. Drug smuggling, drift racing, scum of Ciro, to quote her father. The motorcycle alone gave her away almost instantly. Isabel had recognized the anti-camera flashers mounted to the front. Every two-bit thief in the city had some form of anti-camera tech, and by the looks of it, this stranger was a bit more than a two-bit thief. Before Isabel had any more time to wonder, the bike came to a jarring halt in the ambulance bay of the Ciro General Hospital. The stranger motioned awkwardly at the doors as onlookers didn't bother to pause to look up at the roaring motorcycle. Wait, Isabel cleared her throat, sounding a lot less confident than she had hoped to come across. I'm fine, let's go. She gripped harder as the stranger squirmed to face her. Well, you did just get hit by a motorcycle, and then ask me why I didn't kill you. Katya chuckled nervously. No, let's go. I'm fine, I swear. Just drop me off anywhere else. Isabel felt tears welling in her eyes again as reality set in. I suppose anywhere else is a bit more specific. Katya sighed and rolled her eyes, submitting to the ever-tightening grip around her waist. Okay, I'm not taking you anywhere without knowing your name at the very least. You could be some murderer for all I know, Katya jabbed. Judging by the garments the young woman had shed in the alleyway, Katya had a pretty good feeling what the upper-class lady was thinking about her. Nothing more than street trash to people like her, a dangerous, uncontrollable unknown. Isabel Greenwich, is that what you want to know? Katya frowned as she watched the stray tears that snuck past Isabel's facade. After a silent moment, Katya sighed heavily and revved the engine. Fuck it. Hold on tight, Isabel. As soon as she felt the grip around her waist tighten, the smell of burned rubber coated the air and of the ambulance bay, the two riders already out of sight. Katya wasn't exactly sure why she ended up on her doorstep with a member of the infamous Greenwich family, one of the oldest and deepest-rooted mafia families in town. But, hey, she wasn't one to complain. Not with company that was so easy on the eyes. I'm sure it's not like what you're used to, Katya sighed as she tossed her keys onto the hook. But it's gonna have to do, princess. Isabel scoffed at the word. Princess. It's true. A lot of things in her life had been handed to her, but not without strings attached. No, the burdens of her family's control burned a fire deep in her belly. Still, she straightened herself and took a long look around the room. She was right, it wasn't much. A ravaged sofa, littered with cigarette burns, sat in the shadows. A large houseplant, clinging to life, reached for the dim fluorescent bulb overhead. A faint light from what Isabel assumed to be a bedroom was the sole illumination in the dark hallway that led to it. Katya rubbed the back of her neck. You can take my bed. I'll sleep on the couch. Isabel could have sworn she saw the cyclist blush. Katya shed her jacket, taking a second to stretch her aching body. Isabel, she cleared her throat and softened her tone. You know, eventually you'll have to talk about it. Talk about what? Isabel asked, snapping herself back into the moment after getting distracted by the muscles writhing just below the tightly fitted fabric on Katya's back. Oh, I don't know, what you're running from, what your plan is, and maybe why did you follow me here without question? Katya folded her arms across her chest. Isabel's lips curled into a frown. I don't know. I don't know. My family, the Greenwich family, I'm sure you've heard of them? Katya couldn't help but scoff. Yeah, you could say that. The Greenwich Mafia was rumored to be older than Ciro itself, with a reputation to boot. Greenwich goons were lurking around every corner. Whatever the Greenwiches want, the Greenwiches got. I don't want anything to do with them. Not anymore, Isabel huffed, hugging her arms tightly to her chest. And I assume that has to do with... Katya looked Isabel up and down. The botched wedding? Isabel managed a dry chuckle. That's not... I don't know. I guess it was just finally my breaking point. She trailed off as she began looking around the room again for any kind of distraction. And why did you run out into the street? Katya pushed, reeling Isabel back in. I don't know. I got desperate. And I just needed something, anything to change. And? Did it? Katya asked, looking deeply into Isabel's eyes. Isabel felt her walls crumbling down with each passing second she held her gaze. I guess it did. Isabel stiffened. I know what I need to do now. Her lips drew into a thin line. I need to shake them down for everything they've got. I need to take everything from them, just like they took everything from me. She steeled, glaring at Katya. And I need your help. Katya paused for a second, thoughts weighing heavily on her mind. You don't even know me. I don't need to, Isabel shrugged. I know that you need this payout, and I know you can't refuse a good deal. Isabel stood up as confidently as she could. Even if I did want to, not saying I do, but you don't think that, maybe, just maybe, you might be in over your head? Katya shifted. Does it matter? Isabel asked bluntly. Worst case scenario, I end up dead, you end up with a huge payout. Katya squirmed. She had a point. She knew how to be smart about this, how to not get into something that she couldn't get out of. But this, an opportunity this lucrative, she could be set for life. No more worrying about next week. No more skeezy bars and rigged races. This could be her out. And besides all that, there was something that was just so electric about her. Intoxicating. She needed more. So, are you with me? Isabel asked impatiently. Katya heaved a heavy sigh. Let's rob the Greenwich Mafia.